Yes, so welcome to class once again. For today, we are doing guidelines for freehand cutting. Okay, for our second lesson, we are doing guidelines for freehand cutting. Now, these are some of the things that you consider before cutting. It is like you are going to plan your work. We looked in our first lesson, we looked at the demerits and the merits of freehand cutting and then of pattern making as well. Okay, the advantages and disadvantages. So we now understand that if we don't plan properly for our freehand cutting, we may finish and realize that we've made huge mistakes, which will cost us. Some of them, you may have to buy the fabric again and then cut a new probably borders or garment design. What if, and in our first lesson too, we mentioned that what if the fabric was expensive? What if it was exported? What if it is a customized fabric, specially made for that particular client? What will you do? What will happen? So because of that, you know that you are going to use freehand cutting for a certain design or style, you need to plan. And to plan, you need these guidelines. So the first guideline is to, let me make my screen readable so it's be easy for us all. So the first guideline is to use accurate body measurements to cut. Okay, taking accurate body measurements is very crucial here. It depicts whether your garment will fit well on the wearer or not, and care must be taken when taking body measurements. You have done how to take body measurements in your previous lessons. You know the positions in which the person you are sewing for is supposed to be before you measure. You know the cloth the person is supposed to wear. If you want to measure somebody, what is the perfect clothing for that person? A fit, a fit garment, a fitted garment, or a closely fitted garment. So they'll tell you that the best garments, okay, are the close fitted ones, like the garments that are in lycra. For example, like leggings, is very close fitted to the body. Why? Why do you think that the person should be in a close fitted garment before you take the measurement?
It will give you another because it will not give you another measurement.
Additional measurement. Okay, if the person's clothing is bulky and you measure, there's probably not probability to actually add up to the measurement of the person if it's very bulky. Assuming you are wearing something like jeans or denim, heavy, and then you measure, and then even that garment has pockets and other designs on it, and you measure on it, you are adding some measurements to the person's original body measurement. However, you are even going to add ease, a percentage of ease to the measurement you already have, which means that you are making the garment more bigger. So it is best for the person to wear very close fitted garments, like the example I just mentioned. Okay, preferably stretchy fabric because they cling to the body. All right. Okay. Then your body measurements too has to be very accurate. You know you are taking measurement for the bust, like you mentioned. Normally, roadside or locally, if you are doing customized clothing, what we do is we tell the person to wear the brassiere, the kind of brassiere he or she has been wearing. Or I'm saying he, sorry, it's a she. So if it's a female, so maybe the person wears foamy braces or now we have silicone also, whichever type of braces the person wears. Or what if it is for an occasion that the person is planning to wear that particular garment to, probably on the first for the first time, the person should wear exactly the kind of brassiere she is going to wear under the clothing before you measure. That is why normally we say because the person is not wearing brazier at all, one, you won't even get the accurate measurement. The breast needs to be in a certain position for you to get the bust point correctly and do all those things. That is why. However, if the person has been wearing, maybe the person's collection of bracelets are all silicone, it doesn't matter which one the person is actually wearing under the garment because it's the same type. So you still get what you need to get, okay? And your body measurements, like we mentioned, has to be accurate. You know how to take body measurements, so you take it correctly. You are taking measurement on the hip line, let it be on the widest part of the hip. You shouldn't fall below the hip, above the hip. You know what will happen if you fit, the top will gape or the lower part will gape depending on how you took the measurement. All right, so the second thing, guideline, is to sketch both front and back views of the style you want to cut on a piece of paper. In our first lesson, I mentioned something like this. We were discussing, and then I mentioned that if you are going to cut 10 pieces, write it down, and you can also sketch. You need to sketch the design that you are going to work with first. If it is already on a calendar, like the roadsiders do, you have a picture of it. But in any case, the most important thing is have a picture, whether it is in an illustration form, like you're drawing it, or you have designed it digitally on the computer. You're supposed to have a picture. Okay, so you have a picture of the garment, and then you will know the number of pieces you are supposed to cut since you are doing freehand cutting. So you're supposed to know the number of pieces you cut from your design. Once you get the number of pieces, you know that, and we can see from the example here on the screen. So you know that with the style we have here, let's use the style we have here as an example. So in this style, it means that for the front view, the person is going to cut, there's a line here. So the person is going to cut 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces. But the person, it is 1, 2, we can't see 3 here. So I am considering, because of the lines, I'm considering these two things to be two different pieces because there's a line, a seam there. The line is a seam. So it is 1, 2. The front view too is 1, 2. The back is also 1, 2. It means that the 2 here means that he's cutting 2 pieces of this thing over here. This front piece here up to this line, the yoke here, means she's cutting only 1 piece, meaning that when she's cutting, it's going to be on fold. But for the back, this line here shows that there's an opening there. It's not a zip because it's not up to the line. Please, this is how we interpret. If you get a design like this and you are asked to sew and you are seeing the picture, this line is not up to the waistline. So you can't see this line and tell me that it is a zipper line. It is not. It's not. It's not a zipper line. It may be a bound opening. A bound opening where you fix a ruler loop and then a button like that, like the kind of openings we've been having on children's garments. So in that case too, you need to cut 2. That's what it is showing here. They are telling us that 2. But even if it is 2, we are supposed to have a seam down there. I don't know why it's not there. So this piece, this front view, they've written 4. I don't know why 4, but probably according to the design. Then we have the 5th one also here. So you draw a picture, illustrate, and then you name the number of pieces you are going to cut. And at that point, you are very sure that when you finish, you are sure that I'm cutting 6 pieces. I'm cutting 7 pieces. This one will be on fold. This one will not be on fold. I'll cut 2. This one will have a zipper allowance. This one will have a button allowance. This one is going to have a seam allowance of 2.5 centimeters or half an inch, like that. So you have already planned that. Once you get that stage and you are sure everything is correct, there's no way you'll be cutting and forget anything. How will you forget? Because if you don't plan like that and you are cutting something like a shirt, you will cut the whole, throughout the process, you will cut the whole shirt. If you don't take time, you forget to cut collar. your mind will not be because you will do the lapel and then the fall you will forget. It has happened to me before while stitching. Then I remember that I had to go back and cut collar. What kind of double job is that? Yes, because I did not write down or plan or the number of pieces that I am going to cut according to the design. But if you do this, this is the biggest part to save you a lot. Okay, so you don't finish and remember that I didn't add button extension to my back. What if the button extension was in the front and you didn't plan? Because in your mind, usually what we do most of the times is to put a zipper at the back. But your design now is asking you to put a zipper in the front and you didn't plan. If you don't take time, you cut the front unfold before you remember that it's not supposed to be unfold. It's supposed to be two pieces with an additional zipper extension, and the back rather is supposed to be unfold. Okay, right. Then you follow the instructions for cutting your sketch design to outline the design on brown paper. These people are writing brown paper here because you might have planned your work on a brown paper. For me, it is a notebook I'll take and do those things in the notebook before I do cutting. Do you understand? However, even if it is pattern drafting you are doing, you need to plan and know the number of pieces you are drafting. If you don't plan and you finish drafting and you think you are done, you need to open and cut. All right, so um, let's move to the next point. So you mark the direction of the straight grain and indicate the number of pieces to be cut out. Okay, so we know that. How do you identify the straight grain of your fabric?
First from the edge.
From the edge, what do you see?
This is the fabric. This is the edge of the fabric. So you pick.
You pick what? This is this is stitched, so we can't use this as an example. So if you want to identify the straight grain of a fabric, this is gray baft. So let me see if what I'm looking for is there. So this is gray baft, and this is the straight grain of your fabric. It's called the selvage. By now, I hope you know. So it's called the selvage. Okay, it is tightly woven, so it is difficult to just hold it and tear it. It cannot tear just like that. So it is tightly woven. So it means that the straight grain of our fabric is this way. It is this way, not that way. So it means this is the warp of our yarn, and then the loose one is the weft, which goes the other way. So if I want to lay my fabric right now, I have to lay along, not across, along the selvage like this. Okay, and then I start drafting from here before cutting. So I'm going to cut this way. Except the design indicates that you cut off grain on bias, then you do the bias thing. Okay, so you look out for your straight grain first, and then you indicate the number of pieces. But the indication of the number of pieces to be cut, you have already planned it in your notebook or on your brown paper. Then you make sure to use curves and rules to facilitate adequate shaping. Add adequate allowance before cutting. That is why the roadside people are using 2 inches allowance at the side seams and all that, which is not the best and which is not the standardized way of stitching. If you add an allowance of 2 inches and you have shaped the dress, you are hoping that the dress would fit the body, the contour of the body perfectly. Let's use a woman or a female as an example. We have the contours and whatever on our bodies, the shapes. So we are expecting that this garment fits you nicely, and you are using an allowance of 2 inches. If the person fits the dress, what is going to happen? Loudly.
It will not look good on the person.
It will not look good. Yes, I want what exactly it is that will make it not look good. If I add 2 inches allowance to the side seams of my garments and a lady fits the dress, what do you think will happen?
The dress will be loose on the person.
Loose? It can even be tight, actually, depending on how much has been stitched.
The person is so comfortable. And then there will be a fold and a zip.
Uh-huh.
It will create a puff.
Yes, it will create bulk at the side seams. Wherever you added a lot of allowance, it will create bulk. It will be bulky here. Meanwhile, we want the thing to fit closely to the body. So you can't go and be using 2 inches allowance. It's not a standardized way of stitching. If you stitch like that, you can't export your product. Before you even enter that business, you need to follow the standardized way of stitching. Do you know we have standardized way of stitching? If you want to, they'll check your product to see if it is according to standard. Just like the way we have food and drugs board. Before they will sell any medicine on the counter, it has gone through scrutiny to be sure that you have followed the standards for foods and drugs before they give you a badge number or whatever it is to start business officially. We have for garments also, especially if you want to go into this import and export business. We have for garments also, just that in our sector now, most people are not really doing exporting. People are doing anyway, but I'm talking about officially. For you, your product, that is what it does. To go through a lot of scrutiny. Yeah. So now you have to get your curves and rulers. You see, the roadside method, the roadside, those who stitch at the roadside, most of them depend on their skill, raw skill, to shape the waistline, to shape the hip area. If something is straight, they want to use their own hands to draw it straight. You may not always be right. So since you are in the formal sector, you have the curve, skirt curve, trouser curve, whatever curves, all of that, armhole curve and all that. The best thing is for you to use them to get accurate curves the way it's supposed to be. You know that if you don't cut well to your dress will not fit. This is equal to not sewing well. Your dress will not fit because if you have to sew a straight line and then you don't stitch the line straight, that one too, it will create issues with fitting. So the bigger one comes with the curtain. So if the one problematic area that a lot of designers face, especially I'll say upcoming, okay, or fashion students when you are learning, is shaping. Shaping, especially the hip. If you don't shape your hip properly, we have the idea that okay, it is a woman, and a woman or a female has a shape, and definitely it means that the hip area should be wide and the waist should be small. So because of that idea, you now go and shape the waist and shape it in concave so much, and then you bring the hip out convex. You finish sewing, and you yourself, when you wear the dress, you realize that the size it has poked. It is not lying flat on your hip line. There's a poke there. It means that the shaping was not correct. Personally, when I also started learning fashion, it is a common problem for anybody who has started learning how to sew. So now that you know, if you know you've not gotten there, the best thing is to use your curves so that you can get it right and accurate, even though you are using freehand cutting. Are we okay? People, once they hear freehand cutting, it means that even ruler is not functioning. Please, let's
That
avoid.
was what I was thinking.
Yes, let's avoid those mistakes. We'll come to that part. So you cut out the paper and use it to cut the garment fabric. You this with this outline that is here, they are presuming that they will do their freehand on paper. When they get the template on paper, then they'll use it to cut the garment, just like we do for pattern. Now somebody will ask, so now in this case, what is the difference between the pattern drafting and then the freehand cutting? The difference, if the person decides to even use brown paper, the difference is that with drafting, you go through a lot of calculation. When you drafted your body's block and all that, you went through so many calculation. Join A to 1 to 2, join line 3 to 4, deduct this, divide it into 1/4, do this, do that. And we're doing that and drawing so many technical lines we don't even know until we put together the lines before we see what we are doing. So you will follow 1,001 instructions and finish. But freehand is not like that. Freehand is almost like straightforward. All you need to know, or you need to do, get the person's measurements, divide your measurements into the number of parts that is supposed to. For example, hip is divided into 4, waist is divided into 4, bust divided into 4, across back divided into 2. Why?
It's not circumference.
Good. So across back is not circumference, it's not around the body. So if you divide it into 4, you have made your across back small. If you do that, you yourself, even if you do the part, you will see that something is wrong over there. Okay, so because it's around the body, so and you are doing 1/4 scale, 1/4. So you divide those circumference areas into 4. Those are the only measurements you really need to do freehand cutting, and then you go directly on the fabric. See, these people, they are just trying to reduce risk of going directly onto the fabric, cutting and realizing something is wrong. But if they do it on paper, they can easily realize that something is wrong. Even if they realize, they can correct it there before they cut on the fashion fabric. That is the only difference. It doesn't mean they are doing pattern drafting. Are we okay? All right. Then you need to practice how to cut freehand on paper for some time. That is if you are new, fresh. And to develop cutting skills before cutting directly onto the fabric. That is why this outline looks like you are doing the freehand on paper before you transfer it onto the fabric. If you are new, that is the best way to go. So you don't end up wasting your fabric. It's just like somebody who, let's say you have learned a bit of sewing, but you did pattern drafting and all that. So you understand the basics of sewing, but you do not know how to do freehand cutting. So you went to YouTube and then you found a video, basics, how to do freehand cutting. Then you have also put down your measurement like the video is asking you to do. Then it says, so from line 1 to measure this, put it here, then you put yours on the fabric, the person finishes it, you finish, and you cut. What if you cut and you find some problems? I hope you understand. So it is better to do it on paper. At that stage, you have never tried freehand cutting before. So don't depend on your pattern making this thing and you're going to just use your fabric and cut and realize that there are issues. Okay. Any questions? So we continue. Yes. I thought you wanted to say something. All right. Should we continue? Right. So some supplies or tools and equipment to get before you start your freehand cutting. Um, what is the difference between tools and equipment?
Tools are the scissors,
Uh-huh.
and then
What? Loudly.
tools are the scissors, the
I want an explanation. Then you can add your samples or examples. Yes, I'm listening to you. You don't know the difference between tools and equipment? Really? So in first year when you were doing tools, what were you learning? So tools. Okay, I did. The tools. They are the smaller. I don't know if I should repeat tools, but they are the smaller machineries or things you need to work with. Equipment. We don't say equipment. Equipment, whether they are thousand or whatever or one, it's an equipment, not equipment. It's equipment. Just like we have sheep, we don't say sheeps as in the animal. It is sheep, whether they are thousand and one. So the equipment are the bigger machinery that aids in making the work faster or aids you in doing your work faster. Mostly they are with electric gadgets or they are electrical mostly. So in this case, a pressing iron, is it under a tool or it's under an equipment? Equipment. What about scissors, the cutting shears?
the scissors. I can see is under the two. It's still under equipment because we have the electric scissors.
We have the rotary cutters, and a lot. There are a lot, the industrial ones. So those heavy duty ones are equipment. But the handy ones are the tools. How about your pins, chalk, stainless chalk, tape measure? What are they?
Tools.
No, they are materials or supplies. You get it? All right, I will move forward. So that is okay for us. Thank you. But we are continuing with the next slide. And that is using the tape measure. How to take measurements. You have done this before. So I am not going to waste a lot of time. But then we will still go through the brief. Everybody goes through the process of measuring, whether you are now starting or you are a professional. So when we get to the practical aspect where we will start cutting, we will measure ourselves and then we will see if we have been doing the right things or we have just been measuring anyhow. So let's look at, sorry, okay. So let's look at the right ways to use a tape measure. Before you do anything called cutting, you need to measure your client. So our body shapes our bodies are fluid. If we say fluid, what they mean is that your body changes as time goes on. For women, maybe you have given birth. So at that period, you may add a little weight. Some add a lot of weight. Some add less. Some add a bit, or whatever it is. You have added some weight. So at that moment, your measurements or your body weight has changed a bit. And then there may be someone at a point he or she is trying to lose weight or exercising or build some muscles or doing some body works. Now, we are supposed to take accurate measurements. Aside that, our bodies is not is not straight, or it's not a straight line. We have curves on the body. Even men, they also have some curves on the body. So if you want to measure, you need to consider the anatomy of the body. In biography, we say anatomy of the body. In fashion, if we say anatomy of the body, what we mean is you have to consider how the body is looking. How is the body looking? We have some other people. If you look at the shoulder blades here, your shoulder, from your neckline here to the shoulder bone point here, it's not a straight line. It is slanted. So if you are cutting, you're going to cut or you draft, it means that your shoulder line should not be a straight line. It should slope, right? It should be slanted. The question is, how much slope or slant should we use? How much, assuming it's a straight line, how much reduction do you do to slant the line? The truth is, for every human being, assuming you are sewing customized wear, it is not a ready-to-wear garment where the whole shop is stocked up with ready-to-wear garments and somebody just comes to buy his size or his size and wears. You are sewing for particular individuals using their own measurements. How do you determine how much the shoulder of that particular person you are stitching for should slope? It depends on the person's body anatomy. Some people's shoulder slopes more than other people. So if you are reducing somebody's own by an inch, someone's own may be half an inch or even less. So you, as the designer, have to look at the person's body and then be able to get the exact measurements that you need to slope the shoulder. Now, how do you slope the shoulder? The easiest way to do that is to get a ruler, yardstick. When you are measuring, and this one I'm just citing an example so you understand, because I'm going to talk about a lot of things. So you have a ruler and you finish measuring the person's body and you are wondering how much slope you are going to give. So you can put this ruler is too long, this is a meter ruler. So you pick a 30 centimeter ruler, a short one, and then you place this ruler at the person's neckline here and straighten it. You use your discretion, use your eye. When you straighten it, how much space is in between the person's shoulder and the ruler? You can just use your tape measure and measure it. Whatever measurement you get in between is what you will use to slope the person's shoulder. And you will be a bit accurate than probably guessing. Do we get it? That is why some people, if you watch certain garments people wear, when they wear it, especially if there's a sleeve attached, you realize that, and especially if the garment has been stitched with coat lining, the interline, the coat lining, you know that one makes the garment stands properly and fits the body. When you use those things, contouring methods for sewing, and you don't slope those shoulder line in certain areas, when the person wears the dress, you realize that the shoulder line is not lying on the person's body, especially moving towards the outer part of the shoulder from somewhere halfway. You realize as if it is up on its own before the sleeve came in. You will see, so immediately you see a dress like that, it means that the shoulder probably should have been sloped more than what has been used. So that is just, I just cited one example. Okay. Then we know of our waistline. A lot of people think that our waistline is on the nape. We have different body shapes. In this case, with the freehand cutting, in this case, we are talking about you measuring a particular person and sewing for one particular person. We are not talking about mass production stuff here. So we are sewing for this one particular person. And we are using a lady as an example because ladies have a lot of curves on the body. That is more complex than that of a male. So I'm using a lady. So we think that our waistline is on the navel. However, we have different shapes, especially in Africa, the shapes are different. So you can't say that everybody's waistline really falls on the navel. Somebody's navel area is where the low waist is mostly. So your true waist is right beneath your bust, the slimmest area of your waist. And so therefore in measurement they'll tell you that let the person you are measuring bend a bit. If you are not sure, let the person bend. Whichever area that creates the hole or wherever the body is able to bend is where the true waist is. So you would use a rope, a light rope. Some people even use another tape measure, but I feel it to create a bulk. But using a light rope would be better. So you tie the waistline in position. Why? Because you are going to measure the waist itself. Then you measure something like shoulder to waist. You measure skirt, waist to hip. So if you don't have a back there and you are not sure, it means that your tape measure is going to be shifting positions a meter more, a meter less, half inch less, that kind of thing. That is why it is ideal to tie something, a string or a rope around the true waist so that you can get the exact waist measurements for every measurement that you are taking. So that's another example. So, and also, we are to take measurements of, I'll say, our clients every time you have to sew a new garment for them. The person may at that point have slimmed down. The person may have added weight. And you can't keep saying, oh, I have your measurement already. I have your measurement already. Go and sew it. Yes, it can happen that the person has added more hips. Okay, the person's hip had enlarged. Or some the person might be dieting. I've spoken about so many instances. The person might be exercising or something like that. That person does not have that knowledge unless in cases of trimming, the person had really trimmed until the person himself or herself realizes that I've trimmed. So, no, I have trimmed, so I think I need to come for a new measure. Now, if the person thinks nothing has happened to me, I'm not going under any training, I'm not going under any diet or anything, the person will not say anything really. So you too, as a designer, don't just say I have your measurement already. You need to measure the person once you are going to stitch a new garment for the person, and you are sure that you are getting the correct measurements or current measurement of the person's body. Are we okay? So the general rules to consider before you take the measurement, you have to get to know the basics of measuring yourself. You don't know how to measure. It is not, you can even use the dummy. I think in lesson one, I explained to you the difference between a dummy and a mannequin. So you can use the dummy to learn how to measure properly. Aside your practice that you've made, but this one is talking about a beginner. Okay, so and then you know how to measure yourself, but it's not in all instances that you can measure yourself. And usually it is not best for you to measure yourself because you may not find yourself in the right positions to measure, though we do it sometimes. But it is not the best. And so the second point has already mentioned it. I've already explained it. So do not measure yourself or anyone wearing jeans, sweats, or other bulky clothing, like we mentioned already. You want to measure, they shouldn't wear bulky clothing. They should wear close-fitted garments. And we have already explained why that should happen. So you don't have additional measurements here and there. Okay. Let me put this on reading view. Okay. So you start by finding a tape measure that is soft, flexible, but not stretchy. If it is stretchy, it will extend, it will stretch. You won't see it. But if the tape measure is stretchy, you didn't identify that fault and you used it to measure somebody, what do you think will happen?
to adapt to the
No, it won't add up to the measurements. The tape measure is stretching and then you used it to measure.
you lose, right?
Yes, you lose. Because it is stretching, you are looking at the numbers. So you are just going to place the end of the or the tip of the tape measure wherever it is ending on the person's body. Meanwhile, the tape measure is stretchy. So it has stretched. You are not seeing it. You are seeing only numbers. When you cut, the dress won't fit the person because it will be too tight and the person may not even be able to fit it unless you open it up. Do you understand? So you don't get the accurate measurements. And then you can usually find the right type of measuring tape at the fabric or craft store. Then there's one more thing. The tape measure. We see that there's a metal tip there. Mostly we leave the metal tip on. But in other instances, it is best to remove. The tip is just to protect the edge of the tape measure so it doesn't get torn fray and start wearing out and things like that. But in measurements, or if you look at the tape measure itself, sometimes the metal tip, it is not exactly at the edge of the tape measure. They have left some space, so maybe some zero point 0.5 has added up over there before the metal. You can remove the metal and shift your tape measure, fix it, or remove the metal completely and then you get your accurate measurements to measure. Just from the beginning point, like 1 cm. I hope you understand that. Yes, so you can do that. I think I've moved a slide ahead. Yes. So you let your client stand correctly. You stand straight, tall, and breathe normally when taking measurements. Some people, if you want to take their waist measurement, then they hold their breath and then the tummy becomes small. So if I take the measurement and I sew for you and you wear the dress, your way it will be too fitted at your um waist, and because you held your breath before I took the measurement, you can't breathe in the dress. That is what it means. That is why locally, when we are measuring somebody, locally we ask, have you eaten? That is what we have been asking the people. Oh, did you eat before coming here? And someone will even ask, what food did you eat? You see, because if it is banku, it has a different effect. If it is tea, it has a different effect. So the type of food will determine how big your tummy is, or probably you took a lot of water. For example, like me once I eat, my tummy will protrude. But if it digests, it goes back. And it happens to everybody, just that some people's own protrude more than others. So that is why we ask some of these questions. So if the person had eaten or no, had not eaten, and you are measuring and the person holds his or her breath, what if the person is going to wear the dress and the person eats and is breathing? The dress will not fit at all, even at the fitting stage. Exactly. So some measurements may be taken better when exhaling, when you are breathing out, like the waistline. So the tummy can relax and then we can take the waist measurement. You see, it is not everybody's tummy bulge That is on the waistline, around the waistline. It depends on your body shape. If you learn about body shapes, a body shape like a pear body shape. The pear body shape is not having tummy on the waistline. The waist is small and the waist can remain like that even after pregnancy. But the abdomen area below the true waistline, look at me, this is my waistline. Below my true waistline, that is where my tummy or my abdomen can decide to become big. But up here, no, 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 no. But with other shapes, for them, theirs will come up like that. That one, it will affect their waist measurements. Do you understand? So it also depends on the kind of waist body shape you are working with. So you need to have a good knowledge about body shapes before you start taking measurements. Men also have body shapes. So I already have a video on the channel talking about body shapes. So maybe I'll link it up and then you would go through it. Okay. I'll send that to you as well and put it on this particular video, the link on the video, so you can go through the body shapes as well. Now, when you put the tape around your body part, don't compress the skin. The tape should be tied to the skin, but not pushing on it or causing bulges. Keep the tape taut for accurate results. So you are measuring, and then do you have a tape measure here? So you are measuring. This tape measure is okay. The tip is exactly where the metal is. So with the problem we mentioned earlier on, this is okay. So you are measuring like that. So you let your tape measure lie exactly on the body. Don't over stretch it for your skin to like that to overlap or bulge or anything like that. You will be undertaking the measurement instead of getting the accurate measurement. So if it is going to be fitted, it should be fitted exactly like this. Do we get it? And then, when you are measuring, there are two things. You either add your ease on the work before you cut. Then another way, normally they advise that you put your finger inside the tape measure before you close the tape measure. That is giving you ease. So when you finish, you already have ease in your measurement already. You don't need to go and re-add ease on your work. Okay? Right. So you don't compress the skin. So when measuring around large sections, such as the chest or bust, make sure the entire length of the tape is parallel to the floor. If it sags in back, the measurement won't be accurate. You might want to take measurements in front of a mirror to ensure proper alignment. This means that, for example, I mentioned it earlier, you are measuring your bust area and you are considering the widest part, which will be around the BP, the bust point, which is the nipple area. When you take the measurement around the body, make sure that the one at the back is also in line, straight. It's not sagging. It hasn't dropped below, and then you are measuring this one straight, and that one is falling. You won't get the right bust measurement. The same thing goes to the hip. The hip too, people have problems there. If you are measuring the hip, make sure that the back, where the tape measure is at the back, is also in line, not that it has dropped or gaped and then you are trying to straighten the one in front. No. So you make all those checks before you record your tape measure. So the best way to avoid this error is to take your hip measurements at the side of the person. That way you can easily see the front and you can see the back and be sure that your tape measure is in position before you write down your measurement and you can get it accurately. Then there's one thing I want to mention. I may not get the chance to mention it. So this is it. If you are measuring, you are a lady and you are supposed to measure a man. If you are measuring, this man can be somebody's husband, but in any case, he's an opposite sex. If you are measuring him, Rita, if you are measuring, stop sleeping. If if you are measuring the man and you get to the hip, how do you take the measurement? No, I said hip. I didn't talk about tie. I didn't talk about trousers. I didn't talk about anything. I just said you are taking the hip measurement. How do you take it? You don't know. If we were taking a hip measurement for a lady, how would you have taken it?
And it will be on the bottom, the broad parts.
Where will you stand?
You will stand at the person's
Side
yes.
or front, like we have been doing? I just gave a solution to checking if the thing is, so I gave the side option. But usually, what we have been doing is to stand in front of the person. Now, this is a man. You can't come and stand in front of the man and measure his hip, buttocks, and come and hold the tape measure in front of him. You will land on his manhood, which is not the best. So if you are measuring a man and you have to measure certain sensitive parts like that, it's better to stand at the side and be measuring the man from the side. Don't go and face the man. And vice versa. If a man is measuring a lady, you can't just be measuring and go and be put. You know, okay, it's okay. So we are going to look at. Okay, we just did taking body measurements. So any questions? Any questions on taking the body measurement? So we move to the next one. Any questions? Okay, so when we are done, then you ask. All right, so let's go on. We'll finish soon. Now, the measurements, taking the measurements, we know how to take measurements already, like I said. So I'm not going to waste too much time here. When we get to the practical session, that's when we do application. So over here, even if we read, we are just reading for nothing. Okay, we will do the actual measurement taken, but we know that these ones are mixed. It's for both men and women. It's unisex. So we take the neck, for example. You measure the widest part of your neck. For men, this is usually around the Adam's apple. You know Adam's apple? Do you know Adam's apple? Gen Z, you don't know Adam's apple? When we have a lot of men, if they talk, it will moving up and down, up and down. We call it Adam's apple. It's believed that the apple Adam ate in the Garden of Eden, it choked him like that. Is the that's the story behind that thing. So that Adam's apple is there to show a sign that he ate the apple, and the apple, because God had warned them not to eat it, it choked him and he was there. He left. It didn't go down. So that's the Adam's apple. Now the bust, you measure around the widest part, usually around the nipples. The chest, you put the tape measure around the neck, around the back, and under the breast. You'll be doing those things practically. Arms also around fullest part of the arm, the biceps, the fullest part of your arms. That normally happens with around arm, because arm we even have length and all that, but we are talking about around arm. Arm length is also here. Okay, so that is arms, so around arm, and then the length. Then the waist also around the waist, the true waist line, like I described. You know, some people take measurement, they take the true waistline and they take the belly button level. That's the low waist. For shaping purposes, they want the dress to fit properly. If it is a fitted garment, then you need to take true waist. and low waist. And the low waist is usually the back belly button level. Okay. Then we have the front waist length and the back waist length, shoulder to back and shoulder to waist, front and back. The front and back will be different because the front is concave and the back is believed to be the back is convex. Okay, it bulges out, so that measurement will differ a little. Normally it's just by point 0.5 or something, not too much measurement, unless the person has a hunchback. You know, a hunchback, those people that have a bulge at the back, it's a deficiency, not it's not normal. The chair bulge, that kind of thing, that is a hunch back. So we have the hips, then we have the high hip. The high hip is above the normal hip. The hip itself is the true hip, the widest part of the hip. Then we have the calves. These ones are essential when you are measuring, when you are sewing for trousers. Okay, you want it to be well fitted there. We have the thigh, it goes for trousers. We have the knees, it also goes for trousers and shorts. And we have the ankle, also normally for trousers. We have the inseam. Inseam is in between your legs, in between your legs. If you are sewing trousers, you can choose to do inseam. There are so many ways you can get it, but most people do the inseam one to get the measurement of the crotch. However, you can also measure the crotch alone and still get it, or you measure both crotch and inseam. It depends on your style of measurement and cutting. Then we have the outseam, which is here, waist to the ankle at the side seams. Then we have skirt length, crotch depth. That's what I just mentioned. The crotch, the seat. Another name for it is seat. You sit down and then you measure the crotch like here. This one. So this is the best way to measure the crotch, because after you have, or the flap, after you have fixed a zipper on the trousers, the person is going to be moving the body. One of the movements is sitting down. So if you don't take the crotch in this position and you take it when the person is standing straight, just know that if the person is about to sit down, there's going to be a problem. So this is a sample of the standard measurements and allowances for women. Okay, so over here, it may not be clear, but we have size 8, you can see. So under size 8, from bust to ankle, we have size 8. Then this size 10. So you can use this one for mass production. Maybe you want to produce on larger scale. So you can use a standard measurement to create your patterns. This one will be a pattern, even if you want to do freehand cutting. So if you want to sew for a size 8 person and it is mass produced, you don't need to go and measure any particular. We are not doing customized. You can use a standard chart. We have so many different standard charts, so you have to use the one that applies to whatever you are doing. Okay, this is for women. We have for men too. As for men too, we have a lot. This one classifies under sizes. So you can see XS is extra small, then small, medium, large, extra large, double, extra large. This one, from this one to this one, normally the big people, especially some of these Americans and all that, they fall into this very large sizes down here. So you can use the sizes too and then sew for the men. So you can see if you are sewing for an extra small sized man, his chest measurement is between this one, his sleeve length is between, and they are in inches, his waist is between this. So assuming you are sewing a shirt, that is it for him. Are we okay? Right. Then convenient measurements for ladies and gents. Some of these things, we'll do them practically and we'll get more experience on them. So we have the neck bust. I won't read through it all, but if you need to take the measurement, we have, that is exactly what we just read right now. So these are the right positions to take all these measurements. And like I said, once we want to start cutting, we will do this. We are doing this in our next lesson. And if there are any mistakes you have been doing, you will correct it in the next lesson. Okay. So this is also for men. The first one is for women. If you checked, and this is for men. Okay, taking accurate measurements. Now, convenient measurements for children. This chart is aged between 3 to 12 years. So you can see the size. This is a newborn, 5 to 10 pounds, 6 months, 12 months, and then you use the measurements and you sew. These are some of the standard measurements they'll be using to do children's wear, the ones we go to the shop and buy. So as upcoming designers, you can also use standard charts and sew for kids. So when they come, they fit into their age or the sizes that they are, whichever one fits them. And they take them away. So you don't always need to go and look for children and measure them and use their measurements to do mass production. We have standard charts already. And again, there are other standard charts, a lot of them. Then we have abbreviations used in the measurements. If we are measuring, we want to measure the bust. We don't always go writing bust, bust, full, this thing. So we have shorthand or abbreviations that we use. You can even create yours. Like we have some that have become normal, usual. So AB like this is for across back. BPL is back pants length. BW is back width. CB center back, center front, chest, circumference of psych. Somebody says, what's a psych? What's a psych? What's a psych? Where is it on your body? You don't know. Psych is here, around your arm. Around arm is psych. Some books you will see around arm, they will only write psych, and then you are confused of what they are trying to talk about. That area is where the psych is. So we have cervical vertebral point. We usually don't even use the CVB, the cervical vertebral point. Nape, your nape to your waist. Where is your nape? Good, you know your nape, the bulge behind your neck. So that is what we are used to. Uh-huh. So we have chest width and we have depth of breast. So there are a lot. I won't be go. This one you sit down and you study it yourself. Or when we start measuring, then we'll be applying the shorthands to it. But some of them that we are used to is what probably I'm pointing out. Something like nape to knee, we use it. Shoulder to width, SH, SL, sleeve length, sleeve head, tie. Which one also do you like using so much? These are some of the chest. I've mentioned them already. Center back, center for those ones. We use it a lot. Right. Then terms and techniques in freehand cutting. Terms and technique. This is also associated with the measurements. Once you are measuring, you need the terms for it. So I am measuring my bust, I'm measuring my around arm, shoulder to waist, shoulder to neck, nape to waist. There in books, there are so many things. Oh. You will see something and you ask, so where is the around arm measurement? It's there, but it's with a different name. So you have to study in depth to know that, oh, the around arm, this is what they are talking about. So they wrote psych and you are confused. It is around arm. Are we okay? So these are some of the terms. We'll be using them alongside recording of the measurements. So in this case, it means you are done with the theory part of freehand cutting. I am saying well done because I am hoping and presuming that you have understood everything. However, the floor is opened for questions. Any questions on this topic? So, in the absence of any questions, then we end the lesson here. we will, our third lesson will be practical. Okay, like I mentioned, we are going to do the freehand cutting on paper. So our next lesson, we are going to use brown paper. We will do the freehand drafting on the paper, and then the fourth lesson, we do the same thing with some added designs on the basic one, and then we now draft on the fabric directly and then cut. So the first one we are going to do on the brown paper is like a practice for you to understand how to draft freehand. Okay, yes, before we bring the fabric. All right. So our next lesson will be practical. So until then we will end our lesson here. Thank you.